Hello guys, hope you are doing well. In this video we are going to discuss relative clauses. There are two types of relative clauses: defining relative clauses, non-defining relative clauses. A defining relative clause is essential to understand the meaning of a sentence. For example, the book which I borrowed from the library is very interesting. In this sentence, the clause which I borrowed from the library is a relative clause and it is a defining relative clause, and it is essential to understand the meaning of the sentence. If we remove the defining relative clause, the meaning will not be clear. For example, if I say the book is very interesting, then there will be a lot of confusion. The listener will not be able to understand which book I am referring to. So a defining relative clause is very essential to understand the meaning. Now let us see what a non-defining relative clause is. A non-defining relative clause gives us some additional information. It is not essential to understand the meaning. It gives us some extra information. For example, Mr. Narendra Modi, who is our Prime Minister, is from Gujarat. In this sentence, the clause who is our Prime Minister is a non-defining relative clause. It is not essential to understand the meaning. Even if I say Mr. Modi is from Gujarat, there won't be any confusion. The listener will be able to understand the meaning of the sentence clearly. We separate the non-defining relative clause with commas. A defining relative clause is essential to understand which person or thing that we are referring to or talking about. For example, the movie that I watched last night was very interesting. In this sentence, that I watched last night is a defining relative clause. It is essential to understand the meaning of the sentence. For example, if we omit the defining relative clause, the listener will not be able to understand which movie I am referring to. If I say the sentence, the movie was interesting, then it will lead to a little bit of confusion. The listener will not be able to understand which movie I am referring to. That is why a defining relative clause is essential to understand the meaning of a sentence. Whereas a non-defining relative clause gives us some additional information. It gives us some extra information. For example, the movie Pushpa 2, which I watched last night, was very interesting. In this sentence, which I watched last night is a non-defining relative clause. It gives us some additional information. It gives us some extra information. Even if we omit a non-defining relative clause, it won't lead to any kind of confusion. For example, the movie Pushpa 2 was very interesting. Let us look at one more example. The students who are giving Kolatam performance belong to 6th standard. In this sentence, the relative clause who are giving Kolatam performance is a defining relative clause. It identifies the noun that we are referring to or talking about. Now let us look at a non-defining relative clause. Trilok, who is in Lord Krishna's appearance, belongs to 6th standard. In this sentence, the relative clause who is in Lord Krishna's appearance is a non-defining relative clause. A non-defining relative clause can be removed without creating any ambiguity. For example, here we can remove the non-defining relative clause who is in Lord Krishna's appearance. Then the sentence will be Trilok belongs to 6th standard. The listener will still be able to understand without any confusion. Let us look at one more example. My cousin who lives in Delhi is an engineer. In this sentence, the relative clause who lives in Delhi, it can be either defining or non-defining. When it is used as a defining relative clause, it indicates that I have more than one cousin. When used as a non-defining relative clause, it indicates that I have only one cousin. As we discussed earlier, we separate a non-defining relative clause with the commas. Let us look at this example. The student who was found cheating in the exam was sent out of the exam hall. In the sentence, the clause who was found cheating in the exam is a relative clause. We use the relative pronoun who to talk about people. The skeleton which was used in the biology class was not a real one. In this sentence, the clause which was used in the biology class is a relative clause. The word which is a relative pronoun. We use the relative pronoun which to talk about animals or things. Let us look at one more example. The kids who spend a lot of time watching useless short videos cannot concentrate on studies. In this sentence, the clause who spend a lot of time watching useless short videos is a relative clause. It begins with the relative pronoun who. As we discussed earlier, we use the relative pronoun who to talk about people. Thank you for watching, guys. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe and give it a thumbs up.